Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's another beautiful morning in Brazilian Amazon, and I still find myself in the state of Rondônia, even though Acre is not too far. And yesterday I was cycling through the night, and at some point I realized that there is just water on each side of the road. And apparently Madeira River is not too far, so this stretch of the road is heavily flooded. It's just swamps everywhere. And then later it started to rain, and it was raining really heavily. So I found myself trapped on the road because there was no place where I could set up my camp and hide from the rain. And then I found this little shelter. So let's have a look at my beautiful apartment. Like a five-star hobo hotel. Now this part you need to be very careful because it breaks. With some nice view into the swamp. And last night I could see a little caiman floating right there. I could see his shiny eyes when I was flashing with my flashlight. So throughout my years of traveling around, I slept in all kinds of weird places, you know. Abandoned buildings, abandoned cars and so on. But they rarely get as sketchy as this little shelter. Just have a look. You wake up in the middle of the night to take a leak, you jump from your hammock, and then you step on this. This could easily break, and then I would fall into the swamp. And that wouldn't be very nice. One could even say that it could be dangerous because there is a pile of rocks below. Also last night, right before I found that shelter, I spotted one really interesting creature crossing the road. And I managed to catch it. And I kept it as my prisoner throughout the night. And now I'm about to release it, but before I would like to show it to all of you, ladies and gentlemen. Now this beautiful noodle that you see in my hand is a coral snake, Necrurus hemprichi. And coral snakes are the close relatives of cobras, mambas, of all those infamous Australian venomous snakes. All of them belong to the same group of reptiles called elephants or elephant snakes. So these snakes, they do possess highly potent neurotoxic venom. So if this little noodle tags you, there is very high chance that you will go 6 feet under. However, despite the high potency of their venom, these snakes rarely cause any accidents because these are really calm, peaceful and docile animals. They really don't do much, they just move in this autistic fashion and they barely strike at all. Also, they have really tiny venomous fangs, so it's difficult for them to puncture the skin. But if you get tagged, you need to rush to the hospital. And these are strictly nocturnal animals, they hunt only at night. So I guess now the snake is a little bit confused because we find ourselves in early morning hours. You know, all this time, all these months of cycling across South America, this seemed to be like one never-ending journey, really. I did so many detours, I stopped in so many places. And now I was checking the map. And at the moment I found myself in this little town called Abunia or something like that. And once again I'm standing next to Madeira River. Just this time, on the other shore, there is Bolivia. So this is how far I managed to get. And yeah, very soon my journey across Brazil will be finished. So this morning I showed you one beautiful coral snake. And there are very many species of coral snakes that can be found all throughout Latin America. In fact, all throughout both Americas, because as far as I remember, at least 2 species can be found in the United States as well. But curiously enough, there are as many or perhaps even more species of so-called false coral snakes. Those are the non-venomous snakes that imitate these potentially dangerous animals in their appearance or coloration. And I could argue that out of all false coral snakes, this one is the most distinctive. This is so-called American pipe snake. And this reptile is unlike any other snake on the planet. In fact, these serpents are so unique that they belong to the family of their own. I mean, just have a look at this creature. Look at the head. It seems like it has no neck. And tail, I mean the shape of the tail, looks pretty much like the head, to confuse the predators. And coloration is absolutely striking. And this snake had it really rough, because just have a look at this. It has one horrible scar right here. Probably it got bitten by some predator mammal or predator bird or something. Wow, some tough life. And these snakes can be found all throughout the Amazon basin. This is a pretty common animal. And I kept on seeing them from time to time, but almost all of them were crushed on the road. And the only live individual I found was this juvenile snake that I managed to catch a few months ago. And this is the first adult that I found. This is a fully grown snake. As far as I remember, females get up to 1 meter, 1 meter 20, males up to 80 centimeters. You know, in the world of snakes, usually females get bigger than males, so. And such an odd looking snake, such a weird animal. And as usual, I need to find at least one scarlet snake. One scarlet snake per video. And you know what? This one might be the longest I ever found. This is a really big snake. And also probably the most neurotic. Wow. So I was cycling all night long, simply because I couldn't find any place to sleep. It was just cattle farms and agriculture and private properties. And I think that throughout the last 24 hours I've cycled at least 200 kilometers. Yeah. And I'm just sitting here in some gas station, sipping some coffee. And I think I'll find some spot to hang my hammock down there. Just first I really need to take a shower. So for a few hours I slept next to that gas station. Then it was raining a lot. And now I find myself in this little town called Extrema. And there's nothing extreme about Extrema. I think it's yet another sleepy agricultural town. And I do believe that most of people who are living in Extrema are like farmers and breeders. You know, there's a lot of agriculture going on. And you know, now when I'm thinking, it seems like throughout this journey across Brazil and Amazon, I already made like a full circle. Because when I started cycling across Brazil and Amazon many months ago, when I entered the state of Pará, there was no jungle around. It was just deforestation and cattle farms. And then, as the time went on, I ventured deeper into the Amazonia, and I discovered some true wilderness. And now, many months later, I pretty much crossed the entire Brazil and Amazon. And once again, I find myself in this land of never-ending cattle farms and a lot of agriculture. Good evening, my friends. So sun is going down and I find myself in this little town called Brasileia. And behind me you can see Rio Acre, Acre River. And on the other shore of this river you can see Bolivia. Yep. All kinds of indigenous colors. Bolivia, just like I remember you. Just beautiful. But as most of you probably remember, I'm not going to Bolivia. This time I'm heading to Peru. And the Brazilian-Peruvian border is still roughly 100 kilometers ahead. So I still will have a little bit of cycling to do. But today I'm not cycling anywhere. In fact, I'm just looking for some beer. I want to get a little bit drunk. And let me get back to my hotel and I will tell you why. So as usual, I'm staying in some cheap-ass hotel, and let me show you my beautiful room that I rented for myself just for 10 bucks. Alright. Welcome to my property. Home sweet home. So there are some mushrooms on the wall. And then there are some cockroaches in the bathroom, so I never feel alone. And these are pure Latin American romantics just for 10 bucks. Just for 10 bucks, you know. And one could say that I'm one messy guy because there are my things all over the place. But frankly, I'm constantly arranging and organizing my stuff. And it's just life on the road. It really gets messy and dirty. Yeah, I think it's just inevitable. Or perhaps I'm just making excuses for myself, but come on. You know, you try to bikepack across the Brazilian Amazon on budget and try to stay clean and tidy, and yeah. Anyway, the only part about this room that really concerns me a little bit is this window. Because you see, there is no glass. So all kinds of creatures, including mosquitoes, can easily fly inside. And let me remind you that I find myself in malaria region. I can get malaria, I can get dengue, I can get chikungunya. That would be no fun, so it's a bit of a concern. Other than that, I'm cool with this, I'm used to this, I'm really not some bitchy gringo, really. So I'm just sitting here in this sketchy room, in this cheap ass hotel, and I'm getting a little bit drunk on my own. Because you see, I had some really rough cycling these days. About 3 or 4 days ago I've entered the state of Acre. And state of Acre is a very particular place in Brazil. It is mostly known for Amazon jungle because bigger part of the state is still covered with Amazon rainforest. And back in the early 20th century it was mostly known for rubber extraction. And these days all kinds of gringo backpackers, they know Acre very well because this is the place to go to if you want to do ayahuasca or, I don't know, immerse yourself into some indigenous / hippie community. This is the place to do these things. But me, I decided to go straight to Peru. And my road went through southeastern part of Acre, which is very different. It's completely deforested. So for last 3, 4 or 5 days all I saw were just these never-ending cattle farms. And you know, when you enter the Amazon jungle, it's a real experience like no other. It's really majestic, you know. It's like as if you're entering this another green world full of life. But once you destroy it, once you remove the trees and everything, it's really grim. It's a really dull landscape like no other. And honestly, these last few days of cycling across Acre were some of the most boring, bleakest days of bikepacking I ever had in South America thus far. And I'm not exaggerating. It was just never-ending private properties. Sun was just butchering me all the time since there were no trees and there was no shade. And I just couldn't find any place to camp, any place to set up my camp or hang my hammock. So I spent 2 nights sleeping next to some gas stations and then another night in some central square of some little town or village, wherever. I mean, it was just dull and exhausting, and I just kept on pushing forward. And I think that in the last 4 or 5 days I've cycled around 600 kilometers. So it wasn't too bad. What is also interesting is that I was pretty much constantly cycling along Bolivian border. And when you look on the map, on Brazilian side of the border is just cattle farms and not much of else. And on Bolivian side you can see a lot of rainforest. So I guess I picked the wrong side of the border. But anyway, Peru is very close. I have about 100 kilometers or so left. And then I will dive deep into the jungle once again. Although there might be a few surprises on my way. Actually, I'm pretty sure about it. But I'll speak about that on my next video. And for now, I really hope that you enjoyed this one. And I'll see you soon, my friends. Good night.